going to go over and kind of review your half marathon, 13.1,
Mm-hmm.
13.1. And for anybody who ever sees that bumper sticker or a little sticker on the back of people's car, that's what that means. So it's not a radio station. Um, I feel like back in the, probably like, oh, maybe like 5 years ago, whenever I saw that, I was like, what is that? That's such a random thing. I thought it was like a cult. But
Well, it kind of is.
it's like being a vegan.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a meme the other day and it said, what's the best part of um signing up and running a half marathon? Telling everyone that you're training for a half marathon.
Yeah.
That's like the best. You can fit it into every conversation. Oh, did I mention? Yeah, no, I can't, I'm training for a half marathon, so the carbs, I can't, yeah, no, but I try not to do that.
If people are
But
running for work, you can use that as a transition. Be like, running, I run.
it's tough though, because I definitely try not to be that guy, but at the same point, like, I'm really excited about it.
Yeah,
Like,
it's a big feat, huge feat.
yeah. Hmm.
Kind of like when I do bodybuilding shows, it's a long preparation and it's like the journey worth like you have now accomplished a feat in fitness that most people don't ever even.
Right. But here's the difference though. You don't have to tell people you're a bodybuilder, because they can look at you and they go, "Oh, that guy's clearly a bodybuilder." But the thing with running is like, it's like, people
No,
don't
if
know.
follow that.
And to that point, not that you should really judge people either way, but even coming from somebody like with a clinical background who's very, very accepting of like all shapes and sizes and like health at all shapes and sizes, um, I was still kind of re-educated by the amount of people, of like a larger BMI, or just, people that you wouldn't traditionally consider to be, you
Runner
know,
bodies almost.
yeah, yeah, like what stereotypically see on social media as like a runner,
Yep.
just absolutely blow me out of the water.
Sprinters are typically like the shredded, stereotypical, that dude has abs. Long distance runners usually carry a little bit more body fat. Um,
Hmm.
they're not like what you would think of as like a shredded human being or a runner. Like typically, if you're a long distance person, you almost the most optimal primitive version of being able to move long distance is carrying long body or a lot of body fat.
Right, because of
I
that
know.
aerobic
Yeah.
metabolism. The current trend on social media for the past, couple decades has been, the really fit, lean, quote unquote superhero builds.
I would say, and correct me if you feel this way, I think the body image has, I would say, skyrocketed after the pandemic, maybe because of social media where people are posting more of like fitness, but it's become more of a social norm almost to be fit. And that's like what we should be doing.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's tough, because even though we've made a lot of progress, there's still so much more progress to go and to make. I think we're starting to see those conversations happen through corporations. We're starting to get some body versatility, in the mannequins that we have and the models that we
Yeah,
have.
I follow that.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go into running instead of social media body standards.
Well, I think that social media is actually a perfect segue into running, because when I was, you know, seeing runners on social media, it was intimidating at first, because like all of these people are super fit and they're running so fast. Even their long distances, the running pace that they're running at was so above what I would even used to run at my peak. And I think that's why I never really ventured into running, because there is kind of this like and I don't know if this is intentional, but this is what it feels like. It feels like it's a very private club of runners, in the world, and they're like, well, if you can't run as fast as us, then you're not really a runner. I mean, I would just like to say, and I've seen a couple people say this on social media too. If you like to run and you run, you're a runner, and it doesn't matter what speed you run, what your pace or time is, how often you run, or how good you are at it. If you run, then you're a runner. If it's something that you enjoy to do, that's fine. Um, and I don't think you need all this special equipment. I haven't bought anything for running. At my half marathon, I got a new water bottle, and that's it. I'm wearing the same tennis shoes I've worn for the past 10 years. And I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I mean, I just kind of decided I don't need all that extra stuff. I'm just going to get on the treadmill and I'm going to start today. And that's, that's really, it just takes that step to get started. So I did want to just kind of go through a couple things that, like, me being brand new to running, was just kind of some stuff I figured out on my own, because I think I had about 3 months to train for this half marathon, and I haven't ran in forever. And when I was in high school, I was fairly quick, but I mean, it's been such a long time, so I'm really out of shape, out of practice. But so a couple different things I learned is, one, run slow. And if you think you're running slow, run slower. So when running long distance, everything that I'm mentioning will be in reference to a half marathon, although it could be applied to like a 10K or a 5K too. Um, but in training for that, I started off trying to run like I normally would when I was just doing my once a day or once a week cardio when I was lifting. And that was usually running at about like 6.5 miles per hour on the treadmill for about 20 minutes. But so I tried to take that, which I hadn't even done in a while, and expand that to doing that for an hour, because I was trying to, like, oh, I need to run longer distances. So I'll just do what I was doing. And then, oof, one, I don't think that I was in the proper shape to run that to begin with. And then two, uh, I tried to run that for 20 minutes. And the thing is when I was doing that before, by 20 minutes, I was getting worn out. And I haven't done that in a while. So by about the 17 mark, I was getting worn out. And I was like, oh, how am I going to run for 2 hours, 2.5 hours? You get 4 hours to run the half marathon, but I was wanted to finish before that. I was like, how am I going to do this? And so I did a lot of research. I looked a lot of things up, and it really takes into account the type of metabolism that your body's using. So by me doing the 6.5, that's a pretty fast pace. That's like a
Yeah,
pretty fast run, like a
that's
mild
nowadays
sprint.
that's a run now. I would say jog is probably like
Yeah,
4. I would say
yeah,
running
4 to 5.
6. So anything above 6, like 6.5, you are now officially running. Your breathing pattern has
Yeah,
changed, or you need to actually
right.
control your breathing pattern at this point.
Exactly. And so that shifts your body's metabolism into mainly running off of glycogen, which is sugar. And you have a very limited store of that. And so once that runs out, then your body only has your body fat to burn, and it burns that much slower. So it can't keep up with its energy demands.
Mm.
And so by tapping into that glycogen, because of the intensity of my running, I was just burning myself out. And so the idea is, if this is glycogen and this is fat, you want to be, using majority fat, maybe a little bit of glycogen, meaning that you're going to do a lot lower intensity, slow running. But I was doing this and mainly using glycogen, and that ran out rapidly and was completely gone. And then I only had the little bit of fat that my body was able to, like, get into my system.
Mm.
So what I did is I just slowed down and I took off 1 mile an hour and I went down to 5.5 miles per hour. And I did that. And I was able to do that for a half an hour and not completely die, but I was still really tired. And I was like, ugh, I think I have to run slower. And that was kind of a pride thing for me,
Absolutely.
is,
All of it's complete.
yeah, like being like, okay, you know, pride over, or, substance over pride. I have to figure out how this is going to work. So I bumped it down to 4.5 on my next run. And I log all of these runs in my notes app, and I would write what speed I ran, how far I ran, what, in like what time frame. So, if I ran at like, 4.5 miles per hour for a half an hour and I ran X amount of miles. And then also in parentheses, and I think this is the most important part, I write how I felt for that run. So did it feel comfortable, or did I get exhausted? And then at what minute mark did I get exhausted? Was it 16, 17? And by doing that over every single run, I was able to measure my progress and how things are going. And I could see the improvement. I could look back at what I wrote last time, almost like a journal, and be like, oh yeah. So I remember at last week when I was doing this run, I got tired at like 17 minutes, but I didn't get tired till like 25 minutes, on
Hmm.
this one. And I could see my body being more efficient at burning the fat faster and being able to get that energy to my body, as well as not burning through my glycogen because I was running slower. So I was able to, at the 4.5, run the full 30 minutes and feel totally fine. And I mean, yeah, I technically, was running slower, but I was actually running faster because in that,
That
6.5 miles per hour, I was only able to run maybe 18 minutes of it. And then I was burnt. I had to stop and I had to walk. And at that point, the rest of that half hour is now so much slower because I have to walk, recoup my energy. Maybe after I recoup, I can jog out the last little bit of it. But
it's
I just took a
painful at
total,
that point. I feel
yeah,
like it's a totally
exactly.
different thing. Yeah.
So, if you burn yourself out too soon, then the rest of your run is so much slower. And so it's about finding that middle ground. And um, once I did that, then I was like, okay, I'm good. But now how do I improve? Because if I just keep running at this, um, you know, I mean, yeah, I'm comfortable here and I'll have slight, increases. And so that's when I discovered that there's actually three different types of runs. So what I'm describing would be like my easy run. So I run 4.5 miles an hour. And this is just for me in particular. Everybody's pace and everything else is going to be different. I'm just kind of describing for myself. So there's an easy run, there's a speed run or effort run, and then there's a long run. And those all three of these runs are equally important. So this one is just to give you more time on your feet, and it also helps strengthen your ligaments and your tendons and get your body, just because there's so many other things other than just our breathing and our energy. It gets your muscles and all of that, into condition for your half marathon. And I noticed it a lot in like my tendons and my ligaments and all that connecting stuff that you don't usually think about. Um, and then also the speed runner interval run. That's how you increase your performance. So this is going to be a much, much shorter run.
Like hit
Again, maybe only, what's that?
like high intensity interval training kind of run or not.
Yeah, it could be. But it's just going to be a faster pace, a faster heart rate. And I'm going to go into more detail of how you kind of know where to be for each one of these. But so this is where you're going to increase your performance is that effort one, that speed one, and it's going to be much shorter. It's going to be only maybe like 20 minutes to a half hour. So kind of what I was already doing. So that could be like a 6.5 miles per hour since it's way shorter. And that's going to increase my glycogen stores and my efficiency in using them and that type of thing. And then the last one is the long distance run. And I only do that once a week. I typically do it on Sunday because I don't work Sunday. I have all day to do it. And for that one, I usually do an hour and a half. And it just gets you more used to running a long distance. And for that one, you're going to get all the other benefits of, just running in general. But I think that the long distance run, the greatest benefit is the mental because it's showing yourself that you can run for an hour and a half,
Yeah.
and getting you used to what that's like. There is some people that would ask, well, if I'm running a half marathon that's going to be, 2 to 3 hours long, shouldn't I be running my long run at 2 to 3 hours long? And I don't think you do. The majority of stuff that I was researching, said that it's perfectly fine if the first time you ever run 3 hours is at the half marathon. You don't need to run 3 hours prior to that. Just doing those long runs of like an hour and a half once a week, in addition to your easy runs and your effort runs, is totally fine. Now, the difference between these is going to be your heart rate. So there's actually an equation that you can use called a maximum heart rate calculation. And I've seen like every runner talk about this. It's in a bunch of different running magazines. And so this is actually from the CDC, which so it's evidence based on research. But basically the equation is just going to take 220 and then subtract your
Hmm.
age.
Yep, yep,
So
yep.
for me, I'm 31. So 220 minus 31 gives me a maximum heart rate of 189.
I tell people that's your red zone when you hit that
Yeah.
220 minus your age. And red zone, you can't stay in very long at all. Like it is
No, and even in running for long distance, you don't really want to be in that red zone.
probably don't
Um,
you want to even be in the orange zone? I would say probably not.
Probably not. No, no. So for the effort run, the speed run, where we're trying to increase our performance, this is our short run. For that one, you're going to want to be in zone 3. Yeah, zone three. So 70 to 80% of your maximum heart rate. So once you figure out what your maximum heart rate is, that 220 minus your age, that's going to give you your max. Multiply that by zero point 0.7 or zero point 0.8, and that's going to give you 70, 80% of your maximum heart rate. That's going to be where you want to run. If you have a Fitbit, that makes it really easier. Some of the treadmills have the thing where you check your heart rate. For me, that's around 140 beats per minute to 150 beats per minute. So once I'm above, at about 140 beats per minute, that's going to be where my short, interval running is going to be. I want to keep my heart rate in that zone because I'm switching over into that more intense, glycogen need, and that's going to train that. For my easy runs, and this also includes your long run. Your long run should also be an easy run with maybe some short bursts in there of higher, effort, but mainly easy run. That's going to be zone two. And zone two is 60 to 70% of your maximum heart rate. So for me, that's just trying to keep my heart rate under 130. So maybe 120 to 130 beats per minute. And if I see during my easy run that my heart rate's starting to bump up to like 140, 145, because by the end of it, sometimes it does. I'll slow my speed down because that's not what I'm trying to do right now. And you have to take your pride out of that calculation. And if by the end of my run I see my heart rate starting to go up too high, I slow it down a little bit.
Hmm.
And that way you're staying in that fat burning zone and training your body how to efficiently burn fat. Because once you switch over to the glycogen, now you're mainly focusing, your body's supplying energy in that way, and that's not what that runs for. So that's kind of how I train. And then how often you train is going to be completely up to you, and where that percent is in your heart rate is going to be completely up to you, and based on your age. So I mean, I did join. There's an app for Nike, and they have free plans, running plans. For that, they recommend running like 4 times a week, and so I've been kind of sticking to that regimen. Of doing one long run on Sunday, and then doing mostly easy runs throughout the week, but then doing one effort run maybe on Wednesday in the middle, and then I have some rest days fit in there as well. So
I pulled up three different ones that I have in my online app. Let me see if I'm just going to read the names of them. So there's something called the Higdon and Hansen method. They're two different gentlemen just looking at the Higdon message, it looks like Monday's a rest day, Tuesday you run, Wednesday you run, Thursday you run, you rest on Friday, you run on Saturday, and then cross. I'm not really sure what cross means on Sunday, but a lot of these running methods,
probably
uh,
CrossFit.
you think it's CrossFit? I was thinking maybe
A,
cross.
a lot of runners recommend CrossFit. I'll be honest, I've never been the biggest fan of CrossFit myself, but a lot of runners recommend CrossFit because um, there's the kind of the sentiment that it focuses more on mobility training and ranges of motion as opposed to just strength training, which relies or focuses more on just building mass and strength. For running, we're not really trying to build mass or brute strength. You're trying to become more efficient at using your muscles, build joint stability, and increase range of motion. And CrossFit's geared a little bit more towards that.
Did translating from a treadmill to actual asphalt or pavement, whatever you ran on, or are you on a street or a sidewalk?
It was on closed roads, yeah,
Yeah. So
and
did
gravel.
did that translate different, would you say at all? Because I've heard treadmills don't let you activate some of your posterior chain because it drives your legs back. So the hamstring and the glute don't get as much activation as in real life running, and you don't get as much spring out of the calf. So did you notice the day of the run, it felt a little bit different?
Um,
And was all
yeah.
your practice on the treadmill, or did you actually go out and run outside sometimes?
Well, so being down in Georgia, right now outside it is 90 to 100 every single day. And so running outside for me, I mean, I guess maybe you could later in the evening, but for practicality and safety purposes, to stay hydrated, it's just not possible. You just you instantly are drenched in sweat and dehydrated, even in a short distance. But to answer your question, I did notice a difference. Some of those micro differences I don't know if I noticed while I was running. Afterwards, there's definitely parts of my body that hurt that I've never felt hurt before. But the biggest thing I noticed that I hadn't been trained for was the changes in elevation. Because when I was running on the treadmill, I was just running at a flat elevation the entire time. And even though this was a fairly flat race, there was also some hills. And I'm not gonna lie, that hill was like one of the only times I actually stopped and walked. It was towards the end of the race. It was a pretty steep hill, and I was already pretty gassed at that point. And I got to that hill, and it was just so much different than like anything else. I mean, even just running at the same speed, that slight increase in elevation, I was like, I'm gonna stop.
Yeah.
I can't do it. So one of the things that I saw was, in addition to just like trying to go slow and ease into running training, because your cardiovascular fitness, just isn't going to be there yet. It's not just, oh, I'm out of breath, or oh, I'm tired, or whatever, or even just the traditional muscles are going to be sore. Like I mentioned earlier, the tendons, the ligaments, or, I mean, I'm not super familiar. That's kind of out of my scope. All that stuff also needs to strengthen, and your joints need to strengthen. Um, and they said that actually 80% of runners at some point in their career will be taken out by some sort of knee injury. And so they said if you're a runner, there's an 80% chance at some point during your running career, you're going to have a knee injury. And so they were also recommending some different exercises to start trying to strengthen your knees. And I was kind of lost because joints and anything other than muscles is something I'm just not familiar with at all. And so what I've noticed is at my gym, there's two treadmills, and my girlfriend is actually trying to start training for this next half marathon with me. That's going to be in October. And the one treadmill is broken because someone maxed out the
Fine.
elevation on it. Yeah, the incline. And so it went down a little bit, but it won't go down flat to the floor. And we checked it and compared it to the other one, and where it's at is a 7 grade increase. And so I didn't want to give her that because she's even newer to running. So she ran on the flat one for an hour, and I ran on this 7 grade incline, 7 out of 10, for an hour. And the next day, the back of my left leg, like going straight from like the bottom of the center of my glute down to like mid thigh is killing me. And I tried to look up some different like anatomy pictures to see what was going on there. I tried like rolling it out because I know that sometimes can, help muscles feel better. I don't know. I'm not super familiar with that either. Um, but I've also seen that there's a difference between like connecting tissue pain and also muscle pain. So like rolling out a muscle could help the muscle feel better, but there's certain parts of your leg, like the upper side, I don't know, near your hip, but that's mainly connective tissue. And rolling that out isn't going to do anything because it's connective tissue. It's not like it's a ligament. It's not muscle.
So
So I
typically
don't
foam
know if,
rolling only has benefits for 10 minutes after, 10 to 20 minutes after foam rolling, and it just breaks down muscle fascia to let you get a better stretch, but it doesn't actually improve like stretching or mobility.
I
Can
see.
help maybe with a little bit of recovery. Sciatic nerve. I'm going to show medial nerve because it's easier to fit my body on this, and then I'll explain what I'm doing, and then I'll explain how to fix sciatic nerve. So if a nerve is impinged, I wonder if I can put anything. If a nerve is impinged, they'll usually start it comes out of the back of your head and it runs down your spine. And the sciatic nerve runs down your back, off the side of your butt cheek on both sides, and then down your leg. If sciatic nerve is impinged, let's go off a medial nerve. Medial nerve, usually you get like that numb arm, like almost feels like your funny bone got hit or something goofy feels like it's going on. You can actually
Mhm.
floss nerve. So think of like if just how you floss your teeth, you can move it from side to side. So usually there's an impingement in the nerve, and that's actually what's causing the pain. So man, if I can fit on screen,
$1 million question.
I can floss my nerve by doing this. And it's moving it from one end. I'm pulling it down with my head right now. So it wants to
Mhm.
lift up on my glute. And then you extend the leg out and pull it on the other end, shortening it back and forth. And super exercises like this for the medial nerve are ways of flossing it from end to end. And it'll actually start moving it out of that impingement area. Super unique. Didn't know about this until about a year ago. And it helps get rid of like those like nerve pain. So that's an easy fix to sciatic nerve. Foam rolling could make it better, could make it worse because you could be smushing it deeper into its impingement. It's kind
Mm,
of a hit or a miss. Um,
yeah.
a
One of
little,
those things where it seems like it's kind of like listening to your body. If it makes it feel worse, then stop doing it.
yeah. It's really, really cool. This one, if you sometimes if you have like a medial nerve headache where it just feels like something's locked up in your trap, it's crazy how just doing something that has little to anything, you're literally just going through a movement pattern, how it can
Mm.
like release that impinged nerve. I don't know if you've ever went on a super long car ride, but and got sciatic, like where your butt almost feels like locked up and it almost feels like you're crippled standing up and have that sciatic pain.
Mhm.
If you get that, or if anybody that listens gets that, try flossing or look into actual like nerve flossing. And it's cool how quick you can actually be like, I don't know what I just did and how it worked, but it worked. And it's cool. It's really cool, actually. Most of runners' problems in their knees have to do with actual how their feet land on the pavement or how you actually run. And it has to do with all the
Yes.
in knees and in hips have so much to do with proper footwear and properly how our toes get closed up in shoes, how we just everything down to our Achilles, to our the arch in our footway, and how we actually maintain proper foot health. He's a footwear can lead to shin splints, like if people don't wear the proper footwear. And I think really proper shoes has been something in my own life that just switching shoes. I've had like really achy feet after like work. I walk a lot. So like I would say my average steps at the end of the day is probably like 20,000 steps at the end of the day. And my feet used to hurt. And as soon as I got insoles, which was like, it's an investment. It might be 70 to if you buy nice ones, like $100. And I was like, man,
Mhm.
that's like more expensive than shoes. But the nice thing is they can go in any pair of your shoes. So it makes all of your shoes
Yeah.
like that kind of softness at the bottom. And it was like I was like you, where I had the same shoes for about 10 years. And all I had to do is get insoles into them. And I'm like, it feels like I bought brand new shoes. And that kind of helped
The
out.
other thing that you mentioned, in terms of where your foot hits the ground, that's something that I just yesterday tried to incorporate.
It takes a lot of focus. Like you have to have
Yeah, it
intensity
does.
of landing your foot, changing the pattern of how it wants to land.
Well, and by doing that, I also changed what muscles I was engaging. So now I have today new things that are sore that weren't sore before.
Hmm.
But the idea is you want to avoid heel striking. And I had somebody else talk about how they know a runner that was heel striking a lot, and then they also became anemic due to low iron, and that can I and I don't know the whole mechanism of action of how this happens, but um, it can, I guess, destroy a lot of hemoglobin when you continue to heel strike repeatedly, and so that can cause an addition to joint pain and knee pain just because you're sending that shock wave straight through your leg. It can also cause those other issues too. So the idea that I saw was that they recommended is trying to do like a mid-foot strike. So instead of like landing here and then coming down, you want to try to land here and do more of this, kind of like in the middle or the ball of your foot, kind of like a mid-foot strike instead of a hard here and then continue on. So I was focusing on that, and I did not have any knee pain towards like the end of like my run, and I was strictly my left knee when I was heel striking and didn't know it. By the end of my hour run, my left knee was killing me. It actually really concerned me because I was like, this is something I want to do long term. And I don't see how that's gonna be possible if I'm already having joint pain and I just started.
Yeah.
So learning that, is something I definitely want to incorporate because it was like an instant night and day where my knee's not hurting like that now.
I've learned off of squatting. So you got like just close to the foot. You got your bone here, your
Mm.
calcaneus. Is that what it is? Your calcaneus bone right off of what your
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
up. And then you got your two bones, one that like you almost like prominently feel if you almost push your big toe towards the ground. And then you have
Mhm.
another offset one over here that kind of balances out the other four toes, but I guess it's closer to the pinky. And people always say drive through your heel when you're squatting, but
Mhm.
truly you should take if you had a string connected to all of them, it's the middle area that you're where that arch is where you're supposed to
Yeah.
press your pressure through on a run and on a squat. And people always say like drive through your heels. And it's typically because people are rolling up onto their toes and it's just a simple
It's
layman's
a Yeah, it's a
view,
nice
but
visual.
but it's not truly where you're supposed to drive, because if you were just always driving through your heel, you're not balancing out how the foot and the toes actually um,
Yeah.
stabilize the foot.
Yeah. The strongest base is like a triangle.
Yeah. Yep. Did you work on breathing patterns at all? Like cadence runners, like armies will usually actually have something that they're like da 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 da, and it's to actually start practicing a breathing pattern while they run. Did you focus
So
on?
I no, not so much. The only thing I've seen recently was because I was starting to cramp up here and there, and I saw some things, and I don't know if this is evidence based, but they said if you're having a cramp, to breathe in twice the amount of your exhale. So bigger breath in, quick exhale. And the last run I just did, I tried that when I started to cramp up, and it was weird. It was like the cramp instantly disappeared. So I only have anecdotal evidence that it worked for me, but I can't say that that's fact based or works for everyone, or maybe it was just a placebo. I don't know.
Three is actually pretty advanced, where you, like you just said, you breathe in twice the amount, so maybe through the nose, and you just don't let your diaphragm, no matter how much you're craving to be like, and you want to pant, you control the breathing. So an advanced one might be three, like,
Mhm.
and you just keep that pattern the whole time you're breathing. And it's I've practiced it off of hit. It's super hard when you go high intensity, like your body just wants to and spaz, but it's a way of controlling your diaphragm, and it makes you last so much longer. Like notably, I would
Yeah.
say.
And I guess I do try to do that during my runs and just trying to keep like my breathing, steady and bigger, deep breaths instead of like you said, panting.
Yeah. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Is that something that you practiced while you ran, or just it
Um,
happened?
Not so much. I mean, from what I understand of the nose, again, this is completely out of my scope. So this is just things I know of from whatever. But isn't the nose the main goal there is just to get the extra filtration through your nose? But I mean, essentially, they're both going to your lungs.
So I guess off of that, and I'm just going to use exactly what you use and kind of give you devil's advocate off of that. If you're running and you want filtration, almost has an advantageous thing on it, because let's say I said, "Hey, go run through this area that is like 70% pure air quality and the rest is toxic smog," or would you rather run in something that's 100% good air quality? So breathing through your nose, that is going to have to do with how much purity is getting actually brought into your lungs, right? This is not enough research, but I'm assuming. So I think the real reason we breathe in is because it warms the air and it makes it easier for our body to absorb through like the warming of the nostrils. But
I have no idea, but
I
I
would
mean that
filtration is
sounds
probably
cool.
a good thing, I would think. I mean, yeah. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Is that something that you practiced while you ran, or just it
um,
happened?
Not so much. I mean, from what I understand of the nose, again, this is completely out of my scope. So this is just things I know of from whatever. But isn't the nose the main goal there is just to get the extra filtration through your nose? But I mean, essentially, they're both going to your lungs.
So I guess off of that, and I'm just going to use exactly what you use and kind of give you devil's advocate off of that. If you're running and you want filtration, almost has an advantageous thing on it, because let's say I said, "Hey, go run through this area that is like 70% pure air quality and the rest is toxic smog," or would you rather run in something that's 100% good air quality? So breathing through your nose, that is going to have to do with how much purity is getting actually brought into your lungs, right? This is not enough research, but I'm assuming. So I think the real reason we breathe in is because it warms the air and it makes it easier for our body to absorb through like the warming of the nostrils. But
I have no idea.
I also watched an interesting video today off of, which I think ties into, I told Tira about ibuprofen isn't good for recovery. The inflammation, if you work out really hard, it's not good to take ibuprofen. Did you know this?
I haven't heard of it.
So if you take ibuprofen, it kind of restricts how much like you're taking something to take away the inflammation, which inflammation helps with the recovery process. So sometimes you might actually hinder the recovery of a muscle if you take ibuprofen every time you get like DOMS, like super sore,
Hmm.
muscle soreness.
Your body does do certain things to try to fix us. And so sometimes when we're taking medications, because the act of fixing us makes us slightly uncomfortable, we kind of have to let the body do its job, um, and not fight it on it.
All that. All right. Well, if you're all right with it, I think we're going to end the episode. I am 12 minutes late for a meeting. There's probably 50 people in it. It's going to be a super awkward walk in through the back door. But
I understand. All
uh,
right.
all right, we will. If you want, I think you should pick the episode for next week, and then just text me, and we'll go from there.
Okay. All right. Sounds good.
That's like for the end.